So these microphones are not to amplify your voice; they're just so that you can be heard on the thing. So if you have one over there, no problem, and then we'll share one. It's not to amplify your voice. It's so that it goes on the it's for Kevin.
Oh, so we got to do that.
Yeah.
Yeah. So how do we know when they're on?
They're on. Just assume they're always on. One, two, three. 1, 2, 3. And the other microphone. 1, 2, 3. I'll ask him if he wants us to wait.
Yeah, we will. Manchester. Yeah. My granddad was from Leeds.
Kevin, there's a section at the end for the questions, so yeah, okay, cool. He's ready whenever you are, if you want to do your gavel.
Hello, good evening, and welcome to Mousehole Football Club for this.
It's not for amplification. It's for the YouTube.
It's for the YouTube. It's live YouTube.
You can sit closer. There's nothing wrong with these front seats.
So, right. Hello, good evening. Welcome to Mousehole Football Club. Now, I think I know most of you in the room. In fact, I know all of you, and I know you come here a lot, and I know you're all very passionate about the club, as I am. This is Dan Tasker, Secretary of MAFC, and this is Darren Bernstein, who's going to tell us all about what the fans' ownership entails. Now, I came to this club about 9 years ago, and it's been an incredible journey. And we find ourselves in the Southern League, which I'm very proud about, and I know everyone in this room is. And you know, I've got an ambition to go higher than that, but for that to happen, we need more money. And football, rugby, all sport needs money, and we just find ourselves, it's very, very hard. We're in this geographical location, and it's extremely hard to finance the club. And hopefully, I'm not saying a fan's ownership will sort this. I personally don't know much about it myself, and tonight is just an exploratory thing, so nothing's going to happen tonight. We just all need to understand about it, and if Darren can help the club, that's fantastic. I'm going to hand you over to Darren now, and after there's going to be a questions and answers thing, so you'll all get a good chance to have a good say. And please be open, because we want to air these questions, because without you lot in here, this club wouldn't be anything. You can look around the whole club at all these nice things, and the nice pitch, and the stands, and everything we've done here. But it's just fabric. The people in this room are what matter to this club. Have you got anything to say before? Yeah.
Thanks, Derek. Thanks everyone for coming, and also thanks for Darren for coming, who's come down all the way from Bury, which for people who've never left Cornwall is in England. Thanks for that, Darren. One of the things that Darren wanted me to just talk about is why we're doing this now, and Derek has covered a little bit of that in terms of the finances. As you all know, or as you may not know, trying to run a football club with a first team at step 4 is ridiculously expensive. Our away coaches cost £1,500. On a home gate, through the gate, we probably get a little bit more than that. So you can see instantly that you're always going to be, robbing Peter to pay Paul. And if Paul is here, we'll give him the money later. So why now? So there's the finances. There's also the community element. At the moment, in effect, I don't know if you know this, the club isn't really owned by anyone. We've got our 2 directors who take the blame or the responsibility if anything goes wrong. Ben and Tim, who, without them, we wouldn't have a club at the moment, because you need at least 2 directors at Company's House who they're the backstop for everything. But for us to be a proper community club, the board and the committee feel that a better way forward would be for us to be owned by the community, because then the community has a say in how the club is run and what the club does and what the club stands for. And some of the conversations that I've had since this was first brought up, there's a conflict between what the club wants or what fans want and so on and so forth. So some fans, they just want the first team to get as high as possible. I was chatting to Darren in the pub earlier, and he was saying if we went up 2 steps, it would cost £1.5 million a year to run the club. So for those fans who want us to go to step 2, that's great. And if you've got your credit cards, put them on the table. But there's also a lot of fans who the most important thing for them is the youth teams. They want us to have a thriving youth section. At the moment, we've got 6 or 7 youth teams. There's some clubs I know. We played away at Sporting Club Inkbarrow, which is just south of Birmingham. They've got 25 youth teams. And for some people, that would be more important. And one way to do that would be to say, actually, let's let the first team get relegated a few divisions. We'd have a lot more money. We wouldn't need to worry about money. We could put all that money into the youth. And so you can see straight away that there's a battle between what different people want. And the way I think that we can get through that is for the club to be run by the community, so that the community has the input into those decisions and can help us move forward. And the other reason I think that we need to do it now is sustainability, which is to do with finance, but it's to do with making sure that we can achieve the ambitions that we want, whether that's for the youth teams or the first team, but we can do it in a sustainable way, so that in 10, 20, 30 years' time, the club is still here and it's still thriving, and we're not going to spend money that we haven't got on things that maybe we don't need. And again, I think it's having a club that's run by the fans, by the community, that will help us do that. So that's why we're looking into this now. And as Derek said, this is not a foregone conclusion. We're not definitely going to do it, because we can only do it if we've got enough fans who want to do it. It won't work if we don't have enough fans who want to do it. So I'm going to pass over to Darren now, and he will take us through the various options and how a community club looks and a fan-owned club looks.
Well, thank you very much. Can you hear me okay? I'm going to stand up because I find it easier. Okay, first of all, I'm going to tell you a bit about the Football Supporters Association, because you might not know who we are and what we do. Then I'll talk about what fan ownership is, what it means, who else is doing it, how it works in reality, because I've been involved in a fan-owned club, which I'll talk about shortly. So, who are we? What do we do? We are the biggest fan organisation in Europe. We're a democratic organisation, so you can be an individual member, it doesn't cost anything to join. You can be a supporters group, or you can, sometimes we've got football clubs as well who are members. And through that membership, we represent about 500,000 football fans who've got some kind of involvement in the Football Supporters Association. We're funded by the Premier League, and a bit by the government, and a bit by the Football League, and a bit by the FA. And there's 19 of us, and we work across football, from the England team. So when England play in tournaments or abroad in friendlies, we run a fans embassy. So if you go and watch England, you lose your passport, then we'll look after you to make sure you can get home. We've got 2 people that look after the Premier League clubs, 2 at the Football League, and myself and a couple of colleagues. We work across non-league football, making sure that clubs like you, if they want to be community owned, we help them do that, or if they've got some financial troubles, we'll troubleshoot and help them as well. So that's what we do across the game. There's 500,000 people. There are 50, we've worked with 50 community-owned football clubs and helped set 50 of them up. Currently, there are 38 in England and 2 in Wales, so football clubs that are owned by the supporters. But once we've worked with a club to set them up, such as yourselves, hopefully, we don't just walk away then. You become part of our network. We give you a whole loads of templates and advice, and we help you network with other similar clubs to make sure that you can make the most of best practice and learn from each other. So that's another thing that we do. We also work in the women's game as well. We've been a major contributor to the Independent Football Regulator, which you'll have heard is now part of the statute book, and all the time we're working really closely with them to hold clubs to account, like Sheffield Wednesday and Morecambe, who are still going through troubles. So they're not fan-owned, but we work with their supporters group, so they will have a supporters trust that we work with to put pressure on the authorities to make sure that their clubs don't go pop. Okay, so that's something we do. We have for the first time ever, we've got 2 representatives who are on the FA Council, so supporters have direct representation onto the very highest level of the FA. And the way we work is we talk about quiet diplomacy. If we bang our fists on the table and annoy the authorities, what they'll do is they'll just put the shutters up and not talk to us. We believe that if you get round the table and talk to them, they're more likely to listen to what we say. And if you don't have a seat at the table, you can't really try and move them to our way of thinking as we represent what supporters want. So that's what we do, and we sit down with every single league from the Premier League down to the Southern League, where we have what we call structured dialogue, where we have an agenda and we go through it and we represent the fans' issues with the leagues to make sure that we can then represent the fans and tell them what's going on. So that's a bit about what we do very, very quickly. So why fan ownership and what is it? So again, at the Football Supporters Association, we believe that football clubs run much better when fans not just have a say, but have a stake in the way that their clubs are run, so that they're listened to, but not just listened to, can really direct the strategy and the funding, because the most important thing is that your club exists and is sustainable. And I'll come on to talk about why that is from my own experience. So, fan ownership is you'll have heard about a cooperative. It's a bit like a cooperative, but it's a community benefit society. That's the model we use. That's the corporate model we use. So a community benefit society does what it says on the tin. It's there to benefit the community. The difference between a community benefit society and a cooperative is that a cooperative is there to serve the members that are involved in the cooperative. The reason for a community benefit society is that it's there to serve the whole community. But they are quite similar, but there's that subtle difference. It's set up and managed by the community. It works on a one member, one vote. So you could have a membership scheme where it could be, for example, £10 a year to be a member. Okay, and for that £10, the first pound of that membership fee is what's called a withdrawable share. So you then become a part owner of your football club just by having that membership. It's not a transactional membership, it's an actual shareholding of that football club. If the season after you decide not to renew your membership, you give that share back. Okay? But it's different from a private shareholding in that there's no dividend. Any profit that's made by the company is ploughed back into helping the bar, putting new facilities out there for the fans. It is registered not with Companies House, it's registered with the Financial Conduct Authority. So we as the Football Supporters Association, we have a model set of rules. So the 40 clubs that are currently community-owned clubs all use our model rules, and we liaise with the Financial Conduct Authority to make sure that all the football clubs that are under our auspices as a community-owned football club, that we make sure that their governance is done correctly, make sure all the accounts are in on time, so that the Financial Conduct Authority doesn't come down and like a ton of bricks on that football club. So that's what we do. Importantly, you'd be surprised, or maybe not surprised, In non-league football in England, there is 1,000 football clubs, just under 1,000 football clubs, 980. And we think in our research, there's 250 of those football clubs are called unincorporated associations. What that means is that the risks for the people that are running that football club are incredible. I was up in the northeast and a club told me that they had a family fun day, and there was a young lad on a bouncy castle, fell off, broke his arm, and the next day the club got a letter saying they were going to get sued. They ended up, and the fear factor for the people on the committee was that because they were unincorporated, the liability was on them as individuals and their houses were at risk. So what they had to do was incorporate really quickly so that the 65k that they're going to have to pay out to this kid that broke his arm. But what we're doing now with them is unravelling that they chose to be a charity, and now we have to unravel that because it's not fit for purpose for a non-league team. So it's really important that one of the reasons to become incorporated is to limit that liability both to committee members and also to members who could also be liable. Sorry. So that's a bit of brief. So the final thing is asset lock. So we were talking about, luckily here, your pitch is under a trustee system. So your pitch is safe from developers. Sorry, my voice is going already. What we find is that a lot of pitches in non-league football are in really nice areas where developers might want to build lovely houses on. So by becoming a community benefit society, it puts an asset lock on that stadium, so it can only, if it's ever going to be sold, it has to have the agreement of all the members and all the owners. Come across this all the time, where, in fact, only last week, a club in the Manchester area, where they play, they own the freehold too, and they had an offer to the committee of £150,000 for the land. The chairman, who wasn't sure, decided that would be a good thing for the football club to sell it, but another guy on the committee was a quantity surveyor and said this land's worth £2.5 million, don't sell it. Somebody just wanted to get their hands on the land. So that asset lock is really important. Working with another club in the Yorkshire area, and might as well tell you because it would be easy, called Hallam, second oldest club in the world, oldest ground in the world, and they've got the oldest football trophy in the world. So they're thinking of a similar model to you, because for them, making sure that those assets don't go, and if they did get into the wrong hand, that we're not just dealing with, that's World Heritage we're talking about, because it's the oldest and second oldest. So it's really important that we have these asset locks, because football grounds are community assets. You know, this place here and the other grounds that I've travelled through Cornwall, they're not just places where people play football, they're where people, communities congregate and do things that communities do, get together. So we've got to protect them, and it's really important. What's more important is that when we talk about the independent football regulator, that only goes down to the National League. There's a hell of a lot of football below the National League, which isn't covered by the regulator. So all those people, and unfortunately for my daily job, I come across a range of people who've got really sort of nefarious reasons to get involved in football. They're going to go below what the regulator can touch because it's unregulated football. And so protecting heritage, the grounds, etc., is really, really important to us at the FSA. So that's a little bit about it. There's a little bit more to come. So operates for the wider community, just to summarise. It's one member, one vote. So you get to vote. If you become a community-owned football club, you get to vote for the people that you want to run your football club, or put yourself up as well, which is really important, because this works well when everybody gets involved. Not everybody can give all the time, but what community-owned football clubs don't have is a sugar daddy putting all the money in. But what it does have is the wealth of knowledge and experience and time of local people who are community-orientated and community-minded, that want to put something back into the community. And they do that through their time, not just their wallets. But you can stand to run your football club. That's the beauty of it. You can get income through community share issues, the asset lock, which is spoken about, and you're covered under the law of the Community Benefit Societies Act. The next thing people usually say, well, is that the only option? No, there's other options, there's other community models, company limited by guarantee and a community investment company. And some people also say, what's the best model for us? And there's no answer to that. The answer is, what's the best model to our football club? The answer is, it depends what you want to achieve. Because if you do want to go through the leagues, then you're going to need someone with deep pockets. Every level you go up, you doubles the cost. As you were saying, Daniel, about if you were to get into step 2, so Conference or National League South, you're looking at 1.5 million just probably to have the lowest budget in the league. Above that, there's a club near me where I'm from called Radcliffe. They're in National League North. To get to National League North last year, they lost £800,000. But it's all right when you've got a guy putting that money in, because he runs another business and he's funding that business. But if he pulled his money out, quite quickly they would return down to probably step 4, step 5. Okay, so you can have the aspirations, but if you don't match it with the income, trouble can happen. So why is that relevant to this? Is that sustainability is absolutely critical. And the reason why I know this from my own experience is that I am a Bury fan. So if you know your history, Everton song, if you know your history, 2019, Bury get kicked out of the Football League. To the question of, Daddy, why are you crying? And losing your football club is not fun. It really isn't fun. The most important thing is, it doesn't matter what league you're in, you've just got to have your club there to support, because the nature and the roller coaster of getting up and down, we gambled our future and our existence on trying to get to the Championship. For what? Now we're at the same level as you guys, okay? And we're fighting to get back. And this is not about Bury; it's about structure. Our club now is a community benefit society. So the reason why I've sat in exactly where you are is because I was part of a group of Bury fans that brought the club back as a fan-owned club. So I pay my membership fee, and I put myself up to sit on the board, and for 5 years I was on the board of the football club that I supported, and then was a part owner of. Doing this job, I've come off that now. But you have that opportunity to do exactly the same, to have a stake, a financial stake, but more than the financial stake, it's that actually the club is here to serve you as local people as well, and dictate what the strategy is and the philosophy of the club about what it wants to achieve. If the Community Benefit Society is the right route for you, great. If it's not, there's others available, okay? And so those questions about what kind of club do we want to be is really important, because it all stems from there. So, some examples of clubs at different levels. So, the local one here, Exeter, yes, they've had some trouble. They've had some financial trouble. But two things around that. The first thing is, if it wasn't for the fans, they'd be in real trouble. So Exeter are owned by their supporters, and it was the supporters that, when they were facing the abyss, have lent the football club a load of money to keep them going. But the issues that happened at Exeter around some of their financial issues are not an issue of the structure, it's an issue of the governance, which are two slightly different things. The structure is the legal entity. The governance is the way that the finances worked and who was signing off the checks. Okay, so if you think about, well, it's not worked for Exeter because they're in trouble, think about actually were the right checks and balances in place. So there's two in the Football League. The other one's Wimbledon, who are a fan-owned club. At step 2, so there's none in National League. Step 2, closer one here is Bath City. Step 3, FC United of Manchester, who you might have heard of. They're a fan-owned club. Step 4, that's my club, Bury. And step 5, so you might have heard of Fisher in London. So the old Fisher Athletic, they went bust and came back as a fan-owned club. And they got knocked out of the last round of the Vars, so they nearly made it to Wembley, but just missed out. And then Peacehaven at step 6. We're probably working with about 8 or 9 clubs at the moment who are interested in this model. Okay, so that's just, so it's not there's a lot of clubs doing it. As I say, there's 38 38 in across the English pyramid. So, why does it work? It's really important. First of all, it's sustainable. You cannot spend more than you're bringing in. Because if you do, you're going to have a berry on your hands. You're going to, at some stage, the money runs out. So you have to cut your cloth accordingly. Really, really crucial. It gives you protection, legal protection. So some of that stuff around if something happens, so you might have remembered, Matt, was it in your league? The young lad who banged his head against the wall and died. If that would have been on an unincorporated ground, those directors could have been in real trouble if they would have got sued. So having the right incorporated, or firstly being incorporated, gives you those legal protections as a group of directors and a group of members that you're protected. Transparency is critical, again. Sometimes, as fans, we don't know what's going on. Certainly when the previous owner of Bury was spending however much, 10 grand a week on players, on crowds of 2,000, without knowing what the accounts were, nobody really knew, but something wasn't quite right. How can a club getting 2,000 fans afford a player like Jermaine Beckford on 10 grand a week? Absolutely ludicrous. Transparency is really important for 2 reasons. First of all, for the club, it manages expectations. So just saying, if you want to get to step 2, that's great, but it's going to cost 1.5 million quid. So instead of it being 10 quid to get in, you're going to have, unfortunately, your tickets next year are going to be 10 grand. Because that's what's going to make us sustainable on crowds of 250. So what we do at Bury, every 6 months, we let the fans see the accounts. You can actually see the accounts, which helps for a variety of reasons, because when other fans go, well, you would be top of the league because you're spending more money than you've got, we just show them our accounts. Okay? So it's really important. It manages expectations. It manages expectations of players. It manages expectations of supporters. Being transparent is really, really good. Volunteering. As you will all know, this club does not run without people who are going to give their time. But what we do know across the country is that it's an ageing demographic of people giving their time up to help support football clubs. But what we also know is that when the community have a stake in the football club, it starts to draw more people in because they don't just come and support the club, they've got a vested stake in it. When I talk to other clubs and to young people about fan ownership, it's like you have kids and grandkids who will be on FIFA all the time. It's like, get off FIFA and do it for real. Come and run your local football club. Yeah, you're not going to get the superstars, but it's real, and you get involved in the running of a football club. So it helps with volunteering. Being a community benefit society allows you to attract grant funding. So one of your key partners will be Cornwall Council, and they will have a myriad of funding opportunities that you can tap into as a community-owned football club, which if you're privately owned, you just don't get access to. Next one is that because you are a community benefit society, as part of your statutes, you have to be ingrained in the community, which is exactly what a football club should be, because that's where your fans are going to come from. They're going to come from the community, and it's by taking as active a role as possible within your local community, or in a place like this, communities, because there's lots of small towns and villages around, that by doing that, it's good for the vibrancy of the club, it's good for the coffers because you get more people in spending money behind the bar. So having that community focused is integral to what you are as an organisation, but also integral to the business plan that you do. And the last one is shared responsibility. In fact, there's another one which I've not put on there. Shared responsibility, it goes back to the volunteering. It takes a lot of work to run a football club. It really does. And that's just the first team. If you've got a women's team and junior teams, it just takes so much time and effort. If you've got a stake in the club, you share that responsibility of running things, and people come forward because they've got a vested interest, and it's a more emotional interest than simply just paying you a membership fee. The other one, which is also important, is when you are a football club and you need to get sponsorship from the local business community, it tells a different narrative about what you are as a club when you're owned by the community. And what we find is with the community clubs that we've got is that local businesses are more inclined to sponsor because they realise that it's more than just buying the next left back, the next centre forward. It's about have this community spirit and being part of something because it's owned collaboratively rather than by one or two people. So that's another reason why this system works. But it's important to give you both sides, because there are disadvantages. You can't go, we'll have a good go this year. We'll stretch the budget to see if we can get promoted. You can't do that because you can only spend what you bring in. If you get a sponsor that's willing to put a bit of extra in, brilliant, but you can still only spend that. So you can't gamble on promotion, which a lot of clubs do. And then I get a call saying, we've run out of money, can you help us? You can't sell your key asset, or you can't mortgage your key asset. So again, what we find is that some clubs will take a mortgage out on their ground and put it into their team. And then when the team don't do very well, they've got a big debt and they've not really advanced very far as well. So you can't do that. Sometimes increased governance is a little bit more work. And it's hard enough as it is to run a football club without the increased governance. But what goes with the governance is the good side is that actually it's more transparent. And the final thing is decisions can be slower because you're a democratic organisation then. So it's not just up to the chairman or a couple of people making the decisions. Some of the bigger decisions, you need a meeting like this. So some decisions can go slower. Being a fan-owned club doesn't mean to say you choose the team. That's what some people think. It's not about that. You elect the board to make strategic decisions, but you get the right to vote them in and vote them out. The board appoints the manager, and the manager chooses the team. As a fan-owned club, you don't necessarily choose the team, you don't choose the manager. It works exactly, we choose our politicians to make the decisions for us, and then when they make crap decisions, we vote them out. It's the same, works the same way with a football club, okay? And the reason why it works, again, going back to that, is that if they do a great job, or you do a great job, because you could put yourself up for election, you're not got anything to worry about. So, there's some of the disadvantages, and I'll stop there. You've probably heard me prattle on for far too long, and any question is fine.
What's the cost of being a member of the SA?
Sorry, just for questions,
Nothing.
I'm going to, just so that people on the online can hear it, if you want to ask a question, just can you grab the microphone?
My name's Bob.
Hi.
What's the cost of being a member of the FSA?
There's no charge.
Okay?
It's free.
Good answer.
Couple of questions online. One from Big Matty C. Why aren't there more clubs sort of fan-owned? Is there an optimum size? As I'm sure that I've heard Exeter have been struggling at times.
Okay, so let's talk about Exeter first. Exeter City have been a fan-owned club for about 15 years. Before they became a fan-owned club, they were about to go out of business, and it was only when the fans took it over, saved them from the private model, which we know is had lots of casualties. But right now, Exeter City are higher in the pyramid than they've ever been in their existence. So you could say that fan ownership has really worked for Exeter. They've got themselves in a little bit of a pickle at the moment. But yeah, to be fighting where they are, I think is a success story, them and Wimbledon. Why aren't there more? I don't know. But what I do know is that so far there's 7 or 8 already this year that I'm working with that are interested in the model. And it could be that actually it will get more popular, especially because that figure I told you before about where there's 250 that are unincorporated, so they're just members clubs. And over the last certainly 10 years, as the cost of running non-league football clubs has increased, when it was quite cheap to do, and it was probably all right just to bumble along and just have a committee. But now, because the risks are so great, and we live in a society where people will sue you, see, people are starting to think about, have we got the right structure to protect ourselves? So I think it's going to be greater in terms of community ownership. And then the other thing is that what we're seeing on a weekly basis is investment from America, trying to buy non-league clubs, which you could ask, why does somebody from America want to buy a club in non-league football? Community-based institutions. And I think the growth in clubs contacting us around community ownership has been that clubs are starting to ask themselves, where do we see ourselves? What are we here for? And I think people are really starting to understand that their club is for their local community as much as wanting to be successful on the pitch. So hopefully, that's quite a long-winded way of hopefully answering that question.
Again, Bob, we seem to be avoiding the elephant in the room. What sort of costs are associated with setting this up? Is there an optimum number of people do you need as supporters? How much would it cost each supporter? Is that once a year, or is it a one-off payment? Can you cover that sort of thing?
Yep. So, how much does it cost to set up? Virtually, I think it's about, to register, it's about 50 to 100 quid. how much it costs to be a member, that's up to the committee to set that. So we have some clubs where it's £10 a year. So it would be an annual membership. So Plenty could charge £10. My own club, Bury, we charge £60 a year. There are other clubs that have. We get the average this year is about 3,200, but we don't have. But that's the membership of the supporters trust. I think there's 1,500 members of the trust for us. But we have clubs, like I said, at step 5 and step 6, where they've probably got about 150 members from the local community that pay £10 or £15 a year. Well, so, but we. Yeah. The purpose of the membership is not necessarily just about money raising. It's to get people in and to be part of the club and have an ownership stake. We also, so clubs will also charge, so just being a member of the club doesn't mean say you come in to watch the games for free. That's separate, okay? We also have clubs that have got like a tiered approach to their membership. So it might be, so you get basic of where you're a member, which gives you an ownership in the club and a right to vote, and that might be £10 a year. What other clubs do is you can have like a gold membership for £50 a year where you get extra rights, or a platinum. So as a committee and as a group of members, you absolutely get the right to choose what your membership cost is, whether you have 1 tier, 2 or 3 or 4 tiers, and what you get as part of that package. So you could have £10, £30 and you get a free scarf and a pin badge, £50 and you get access to matches or whatever. It's up to you, and that's the whole beauty of the system, in that you get to choose because you own the club.
One second, Bill.
Well, if we got every person in Mousehole, our community, to join, it wouldn't be enough to even get it the next year to pay this season's. How big a community do you have to go? How big, how many members do you need to sustain?
So it's not about that. The membership money is not there to sustain the football club. It's a way of engaging people to have an ownership. So so you'll have cooperatives in the local area, not just football clubs, but
We haven't got a big community in Mousehole.
but
How far out do we go?
as far as you want.
That takes some organising.
Yeah, it's not something that you'll click your fingers at and it'll happen. It will need time and work and letting the local community understand that they can have a stake in their local football club. What it does, the income money gives some income to the football club, but that's not to take away from the importance of the match day revenue, the bar revenue and sponsorship revenue. It's just another way of owning the football club, because otherwise, instead of at the moment you've got two directors, effectively what can happen then is that you might get 100 people from the community who have got a share in the football club, and starts to bring people together. So it's not meant to be an alternative to season tickets and match day revenue. It's just a way of having local people having a share in the running of their club. So clubs of a similar size up in the Midlands, in fact we've got smaller ones than this. There's a club in the Midlands their average crowd's about 150. They recently got knocked out in the quarterfinals of the Vars, and they've got a community benefit society, and I think they've got about 100 members, and it's £10 a year. But it's not, the reason for doing it was not to get membership income. The reason was so that the football club was owned by local people, not just one or two, so that the local local people, local community have got a vested interest that it's theirs, and they can determine whether they want to strive and go through the system, go up the leagues, or go, actually, we are where we should be. Because at the moment, your average crowd's about 250 to 300, which is about the right level for Step 4, for Southern Leagues. If you were to get promoted, the average crowd is 600. What we know is that from our stats, if you get promoted, you don't necessarily, everything doubles. Your crowds, everything except your crowds doubles. Your costs double, your travel costs double. But what we find is that attendances go up just a slight amount, usually because away teams want to go to a new ground. But if you're then the smallest club in the division above, what then happens is that your budget is half as big as other clubs who are getting the average attendance. And therefore, if you struggle at the division above, actually local people don't come because you're struggling. So you're better off doing well in a lower division in terms of the finances. So it's a fine balancing act between wanting to strive on the pitch but being sustainable. And always asking yourself, what kind of club do we want to be? And when that happens democratically, because everybody in this room, if you remember, would have their say, then you get to the right decision, because you've got to then weigh up the risk of striving as opposed to going, actually, where the men's first team is the right level, but we're not doing enough on women's football or youth football. And actually, as a group of people, you can make that decision. In a different scenario, it would be up to one or two people.
Yeah, okay. So I think we would struggle. Our catchment area isn't very big. We would struggle to get crowds of 300-400 here. We would never do that, what we got here. Where do we get the fans from? How do we get people through the gate?
Yeah, it would be a real challenge. We were talking about chimney pots. and you know, in an urban area, there's lots of chimney pots. But what we do know, again, is the more ingrained in your community, the more people will come out. But what you just said is the exact reason why striving to get a level above where you need to get to, or where you can really damage the fabric of your club, because the financial risk to going a step higher than where your natural level is can put you under immense financial strain. Because if you look at where you are now, which is step 4, and say you were to survive this year and then go up to step 3 the year after, you're looking at probably 5 or 6 trips to London, probably 8 or 9 overnight stays, and
Wow.
which is absolutely,
It's a big step.
it's a big step. And that's before you even double the wages of the players who are at step 3. And the other scenario is, and so we're near where so Barrow up in Cumbria, they're in the Football League now, but they train in Manchester. And you think, well, is it Barrow anymore? Is it that, you know, they play their games in Barrow, but actually you want it to be local. So the higher you go, the more everything doubles, and the strain and then the danger of losing your club. I don't want anyone, the reason why I do this role is I don't want anyone to go through what I had to go through, because it's not fun. And it doesn't matter whether you support an old Football League club or you support a club like Mousehole. Your club is your club, and it's your community. And something is lost when the community loses its football club. So it sounds like I'm a doom merchant, and I don't want success. The game's built on glory and getting promoted, but you've just got to be careful with what you wish for. And
Thank you.
Can I just pass a couple of questions from from online, because I think they're related, that I'll come across to you. Is that okay? From Les, realistically, how many fans do you need to be involved to make this work at an affordable cost to the fans? And from Gary, is there a minimum number of fan ownerships that must be reached before you can go ahead?
There's no minimum. It's what works. So we've got clubs, I say, who are community benefit societies that have got about 100 members. So you can make it work with 100 members. What's really important is expanding the number of people that are involved in the running of the club. So using the current team that are moving the club forward, but then as you get your membership, using those members to say, right, we need people to do X, Y, and Z, because the value of it is building on the skills that everybody's got through their career, and there's a role for everybody in running a club. So I'll talk about my own club again. There are people that used to sit about a block away from me that I never knew, and the amount of talent there is in a fan base in terms of professionalism, lawyers, mergers and acquisitions, accountants. There's just within the fan base and within the community, there are all the skills you need to run a football club. Previously, certainly Bury had never asked for local people to get involved, and as we've been running the club ourselves, it's been great, because people, well, I do that, I write bids, I'm an accountant, I can help with the finances. You'll have that within your community for sure. So numbers wise, to answer that question, if you had 100, that would work. In terms of the finances, don't use the membership fee to drive your finances. That's just an income stream that you can do, and the members can determine what you do with that money. But the key thing is, how can you extend the number of volunteers to help run the club and grow what you can do, and use the expertise of local people? That's really important.
Right, I have a question. What about if you're talking about going up? What about if you go the other way, you go down? Would this model still work for that?
Yeah, so the slide I showed with all the different levels. So we've got community-owned clubs from the Football League down to step 6. So two leagues below. So if you went down to the Southwest Peninsula, it would be.
So if you went down, you would reduce your costs?
Yeah.
Yeah?
Yeah.
So why don't you talk about that then? Why can't everybody, like you said, you used a good word, which was punching above your station. Could you come down there?
Well, yeah, if you
to save your costs?
Yeah.
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 So why don't they do that?
Well, I think it's a balance. So in the rules that we use, there's one of the 5 key things is to play at as high a level as possible while being sustainable. Now,
but that's all well and good, but what if you come down for a season,
yeah,
and regrouped your finances, yeah,
yeah,
and then start thinking
absolutely
about going up?
Absolutely, yeah. So that's how it could work. So the thing with football is it's very, most people always think about the next season, we've got to get up. But actually, if you have a longer term plan, so the question before, a key challenge for this club over the next 3 years, if it does aspire to get to the next level, knowing that at step 3, the average crowd is 600, and also knowing that geographically you're a complete outlier, so your travel costs will probably be about 10 times the costs of other clubs.
Yeah, I understood everything you said.
So what that means is that you can work out how much it's going to cost you to play at the next level. You can work out what your average crowds you'll need to get. So say you need to then get to 500 or 600 average crowd, which is going to be really challenging, but without a plan, you'll never do that. So over the next 3 years, what the football club needs to do is put a marketing strategy in place where the average crowd, not immediately, but over the next 3 years, gets to 600 to match what it is at the next level up, to have a fighting chance of even being sustainable. That's exactly what you were saying. So rather than go for promotion right away, you build, and as a community and as a group of people that own the football club, you know you're not quite ready to get promoted. So what we're going to do is we're going to work towards being able to afford it so that when we do get there, we're not jeopardising the future of the football club, just to have that 1 year at step 3 that might break you for the next 10 or 15 years. Does that make sense?
Is it me? Okay, so I just going back to the model you're talking about. What is this model's relationship with charity, with the Charity Commission? Is there a link to it at all?
No.
Okay. The reason I ask is because when you talk about sponsorship, and I'm not a specialist in the football or sports area, but I've run venues. Is that, as I understand it, if you become a charity or you're a charitable organisation, sponsors can then input money into the club as a way of lowering their corporation tax. So I just that's why I wondered if it was limited, well, if it was acceptable in that way to look at it that way. Do you understand what I'm saying?
Yeah.
Because so somebody's got a lot of money to put into a club and they can lower their corporation tax. That's a huge opportunity for them because they're going to spend the money anyway. So I just wondered if you were linked if it was linked across the Charities Commission. That was all.
Yeah. No, it's a different structure.
Yeah, I get that totally. But you did mention there was one structure on that list you put up,
So
which was linked to the Charity Commission.
There are clubs in. We don't work with them specifically, but there are clubs within the National League system that are charities. But what they find is that they outgrow, because of the nature of football, they outgrow the purpose, certainly around tax and VAT and stuff like that. But where it does work, so again, I've used the example of my club because I've lived and breathed it.
Mm-hmm.
We've got a community benefit society that owns a football club, but we also have a charity, so I chair that charity, and we get money from local pots of money, trust funds, and we invest that in the local community to get kids off the street and education. So you can have a mixture of models. You can even have, so if you've got junior teams, there's a thing called a community amateur sports club, so called a cask, and you can put your junior clubs into a cask. So we've got lots of different clubs where they've got a variety of different company structures within the same club.
Yeah.
For different tax reasons.
So maybe Mousehole needs to look at maybe like a web sort of structure where it's got that element there, that element there, that element there.
Yeah.
Because something like, for example, if you were to split out the bar here and put that into a limited company, that could then make money and put its profits straight back into a charity without paying any corporation tax.
Yep. We have that as well. So we've got clubs where the ground is a company limited by guarantee, a community investment company that does what you said, and it channels the money into the football club through that, or they split it between the football club and the juniors. So there's lots of different models. It doesn't need to be a one-size-fits-all approach.
I'll shut up now.
No, it's fine.
A couple more questions from online. Someone's asking, with our geographical location, travel is one of the biggest costs for this club, especially at the moment with increasing fuel costs. Can fans have more of a say in regard to the way that team travel and expenses for the team, for example?
Under this model, absolutely. Not only do they get a say, but the whole point is that the fans are the owners. Whereas if you were a, let's say, an Arsenal fan, and your team is flying to Norwich for a game, and you're not happy about it for environmental reasons, you might not be happy about it as a fan. the club aren't going to listen to you. The whole point of this is that as a group of members and owners, so clubs like FC United don't even call their members, they call them owners, or co-owners. You get to speak to the people that you elect onto the board of the football club and say, we don't think you should be getting the train first class, for example. So absolutely the answer to that question is yes.
Question from someone watching on YouTube. Is this model better suited to a local people to encourage greater local involvement in the club? This person is not local to Mousehole and wonder whether it would be more appropriate for someone like them to be a member. So is it focused mainly on local members who are in the community geographically, or can it spread?
It can spread. I'll give you a good example. So there's a club in Sussex called Lewis. Lewis FC have got the majority of their members are based around the world because of what they did around, it was a thing called Equality FC, around levelling the wages of the men's team and the women's team. So yeah, absolutely. It doesn't have to just be local people. It's people that buy into the ethos. It might be local people that have gone to other places to go to uni or for work and want to have some kind of connection back to where they're from. And for £10, they can help own their local football club. So there might be a Mousehole or this part of Cornwall diaspora that you can tap into and say, put something back into your local community, and this is a good way of doing it. So yeah, absolutely.
From your experience, do you think that we've got a good story to tell here that would lead to that kind of membership?
I don't know your story, but every place has got its story. You know, even a place that, you know, you said about Berry Market and you said about Black Pudding. Everybody. No, I said about Allen. So there's a story to be made about every place that people are from, because actually that's what football is. It's about our local communities, and our football clubs are representatives on a pitch of who we are and where we're from. So absolutely, if you tap into that story of what makes local people, yeah, definitely.
I'm not sure how to formulate this question, but it feels like we need to, like the club, the fans, you know, and I think this, you know, this potentially is a great model. But one of the early things you said was like, we need to determine what our drivers are, don't we? You know, and you know, sitting in this room, I wonder, do most people think it's the first team and us going as high as we want is what we want, or is it you? You know, you've already got a really diverse range of opinions, and how do we go about determining what our key drivers are, which I think keys into what you just said, how we tell the story, how you sell the club, how we create our a USP, you know, to kind of go, this is what we're about and that's why you want to buy into us. So are there models, are there ways of kind of trying to canvass opinion and go, we're going to really look at youth, our women's section, or is it just all about the first team, or is it all of that? But how do we do that?
I think the first thing is about asking each other, what do we want, what's important to us as fans of the club, but then also doing something wider as well about what's important to the next sort of ring of people that might come to the odd game. So there's 20 or 30 people in the room tonight. What about the next 100 that come maybe to half the games? And then what about the next 50 that maybe come once or twice? And then people that, the local businesses, what do they think? What do they want from the football club? And then as you do that research, and there will be people locally who have either been researchers or old academics that are retired to this area, that actually this would be a really simple sort of research project where you just find out, and asking people is so powerful. A, because it gives you the information that you want to base your decisions on, but asking people questions that, you know, what do you think? They've never been asked before. Starts to open up a new dialogue and a new conversation to entice people in. That actually, because I think the question before about why isn't this? I don't think people really understand that you can own your own football club. We see the Premier League and it's billionaires, but you can own your football club. You can have a stake, and so actually, what we need to do is maybe get the word out more that if your local club is small and you've got enough people that can make it happen, it can work. But everybody's got to pitch in. You can't leave it to other people to do. Everyone's got to pitch in and be a part of it.
Can I just answer one? I think it's a fundamental question, basically. What does the club want? I've recently started doing an FA leadership course. I'm only partway through it, so I'm not a leader yet. But one of the very first things that it talks about is how your club needs to have a strategy. Because without strategy, you don't know where you're going. And part of that strategy is building this thing called a strategic house. So I don't want to take you through the course now, but in very brief, you start off with a vision. So what's our vision for the club? And often that's encapsulated in a single phrase like moving forward together, or something like that. And then beneath the vision you have a mission statement, which is how we're going to achieve that vision. And then beneath that you have your strategies and so on and so forth. And so one of the things that I want to do once I've finished the course is put together a strategic group, which will come from the football side, it will come from the youth side. I'm hoping there'll be one or two fan representatives, so that we get all of those different views, and we can get a combined vision of where the club wants to be. Because at the moment, we don't plan, as you probably know, or you might not know, we don't plan strategically, really. And that's not a criticism of anyone, really. It's just the way we find ourselves now is having had a first team that got promoted really quickly. We were a pub team 10 years ago, and now we're only 4 promotions away from League Two. And it's almost happened overnight, and we need to be better. I put myself in that level of criticism. I need to be better, and that's why I'm doing the course. But I think, your question comes down to the whole root of everything. What does the club want to be? And when I say the club, I mean the players, the football management, the fans, the volunteers, people who give, I look around here and there's so many people in here who give so many hours every week. What do you want out of that? There's people here who started as fans of the club, and now because they volunteer on a Saturday, they don't get to watch the football, but they still do it, and it's incredible. And we need to grab that enthusiasm and that effort and everything, and we need to work out what we as a group, all of us, want this club to be. Where do we want it to be in 5 years' time? At the moment, we're not 100% sure where we want it to be in 6 months' time. But I think we need to get the answer to that question, and hopefully when I finish the course, I can help us move in that direction.
The emphasis on the presentation this evening has been about this is not for funding players or running the club, it's about incorporating people as volunteers. Is that down to the club then to have a caveat if you become a member? And it's going to be very difficult to say that to become a member you must put in X amount of hours a month, because if there's going to be people that just want to be a member to get a vote and come in on a meeting once every 6 months, then we're back to where we are now, where there's a handful of people that are predominantly in this room now carrying on to do everything, which doesn't really sit well, and it doesn't really help the club. The whole emphasis on it's not about paying the players, it's not about drawing money in so that we can pay the players or pay the ground, whatever it might be. It's about utilising people's professionalism and different professionalisms across the board. But if they don't want to do that, why should they get a vote? That sounds a bit harsh.
No,
you know what I mean?
No, absolutely. I think the difference is that and this is what I found through my experience of being involved in it and working with other clubs with this model, is that when you are a member, so therefore an owner, and you have those skills, there is a greater propensity for people to go, I can do that, I can help out, because they've got it's not the 10, for a lot of £10 is now probably a pint and a half. So that is not, it's not it's an emotional transaction. And so, as I say, through the amount of people that volunteer with my club do it because they're part owner and they want to give something back to the community because we saw what we lost. So it's about utilising community spirit, because this is here for us all and you've got something to give. So you could have it as a £1 membership if you wanted. It doesn't really matter, because it has to be at least £1, because the rules say that first £1 is what makes you a co-owner. But the onus is on the club to then, for example, when you do your membership forms, ask what people either did when they were working, if they're retired, or what they do. So you've got a nice database of not just members, but skills that are within you. There's a job for everybody. So again, going back to my club, if all you can do and all you want to do is pick litter at the end of the game, that's fine, because it needs doing. If you've not got time, but you're a business person and you want to do something more strategic and business-wise, there's a job for you. So it's about getting people to give as much or as little as possible, but being part of this community because you own it.
I think a lot of that comes back to the people in this room now not allowing it, that's the wrong terminology, but stepping back and saying, lovely, carry on.
Yeah.
Because this is a very small community of people that help. And the more we keep doing it, the less people are going to try and get involved. So a lot of it comes down to us to step back and go, lovely, carry on and get involved.
And again, I know where it works best is when you give people who want to volunteer roles that they know that they can do or they want to do, as opposed to there's this thing that nobody else can be bothered doing or wants to do, so will you do that? And it's like, then they try it once and then they go, I don't really want to do that. But people have got skills and something to offer, so it allows the board to open up and it allows the community in. So it works in different ways.
Maintain control of the shares that are out. For instance, if 10 people from Falmouth decided to buy into the club and there was 50 members, they could have quite an influence on what's going in our club. So how do we maintain control? Can you say yes and no to certain people you want within your club, or is it open season?
Well, if people are members, they're members and they get a vote. In terms of control, the more active that the membership is, usually what we find is when there are a group of people that you can't stop them being members unless they break a code of conduct, for example, which case you can say, sorry, this is not the kind of club where we want people like you who, the code of conduct might be about racism, misogyny, etc., which is fine, but you can't just stop people being a member because you don't like them. What you do is you use the wisdom of crowds, okay? So if there's a few people that want to vote against something, well, you make sure through democracy, because that's what it is, that the majority understand that you can't put a player on £10,000 a week. So you use the wisdom of crowds and the voting to get to the right decisions. What you can do each year is, because there'll be elections every year for roles that come up on the board. What you can do is when you say the elections are going to be in 6 weeks' time, you can close the membership. So that what it means is that you can't get a load of new people that are just going to be a member for 6 weeks, vote out the current board, put a load of people in who might want to do stuff that the board don't want to do, or the club doesn't want to do. So, and we do that quite a lot, where an election is called and we stop new members joining.
Can I ask you about democracy? What is the method for the voting on regular decisions or big decisions? Is it 50% or 50 plus 1? What's the...
No, so so in terms of voting, so on an election, so if the first election, there's usually nine places on the committee. The highest 9 get on the committee, and then what you usually do is each year you rotate 3, so that there's always continuity. So in terms of the voting for people in, it's whoever gets the highest amount. In terms of decisions, so say for example, you wanted to check, say 3 years down the line, it wasn't working for you, and somebody came in and said, we're going to buy Mousehole and from the supporters, and we're going to turn it back into a private football club. What that would mean is that it would be a special resolution where 75% of the members would have to agree. For example, before Wrexham were bought by the 2 Hollywood people, it was a fan-owned club, which was slightly different to this situation because there'd been a football league club for years and years and years, and they were competing against Salford City, who'd lost about £100,000 a week trying to get promoted to the Football League, and Stockport, who'd lost about £80,000 a week to get to the Football League. And the Wrexham fans were just desperate to get back. So when the 2 Americans said, we'd like to buy Wrexham, it happened in exactly the same way. That there was a resolution where the fans voted to sell the club to these Americans, and if it wouldn't have got 75%, then they wouldn't have sold it. So that's how the voting works.
Have you got any examples of clubs who have done this and have quite quickly decided not to go through with it because it hasn't worked for them?
Not really.
It just so happens, by coincidence, we played Froome this weekend, and I know we spoke to a few Froomeites, if that's the term. Yeah. Can you, in brief, just tell us what went wrong?
Yeah. So it's quite complex, so I'll try and make it as simple as possible. So about 2 or 3 years ago, Frome Town were in quite dire financial straits. Previous to me getting to the FSA, a couple of colleagues worked with Frome Town, so they worked with the council and the football club. The ground was owned by the council. The ground was owned by the football club, but was going to get repossessed by a company that had given a loan to the football club. The council bailed out the football club and the ground to make sure it didn't get in the hands of developers. And what they did was they set up a community benefit society, not for the ownership of the football club, but for the ownership of the clubhouse. So similar to what we were talking about before. But the ownership of the football club stayed with the people that had got the football club into financial issues in the first place. So you had you had a separation of the football club and the ground. The people who were involved in the Community Benefit Society were not getting on with the people that run the football club, so there was a dispute and a falling out. And cut a long story short, an American investor, but the reason why Frome were at the top of the division is American investor came in and bought the ground from the council on a lease to buy situation. It's because this is going out live, it's probably not right, and I'll probably end up myself getting sued if I told you what was going on. So I'm not going to go into too much detail to make sure my own house doesn't get repossessed. But let's say they're at the top of the league. I think the council are considering their options about what's happened. So it's not an ideal situation with the football club, and we'll see how that unravels over the next year or two. But now that football club's ground is owned by effectively someone in America, which is great for them. They'll go up this year, which is great, but we'll see what happens next year. But the situation with the CBS that owned the clubhouse is that it wasn't the model that didn't work, it was the dispute between individuals.
Anybody else?
Any other questions?
Yeah, I have one. So does it only work if you've got assets? So could the FSA take over a club that's run from a council-run ground or council-owned ground?
Yeah, we don't take over the clubs.
But I mean, would the model work in that situation? It still does work. It's exactly the same thing.
Yeah.
Exactly the same principle.
Any more questions?
I mean, we're not the most solvent club in the world. What happens if somebody we owe money to calls it in? What happens then?
If someone calls, just repeat the question, sorry.
We're not the most solvent club in the world. What happens if somebody calls one of their debt in? What happens then? How do we manage that?
Well, just like any business, so you'd have to realign your budgets. So got a situation with another club in the north where overnight someone that's lent the club a bit of money has said, I want my money back. So they're going to have to reshuffle, and that money has to come from somewhere. And it's going to be probably the football budget until they're level. So going back to what you were saying, you have to manage. You know, if it's overstretched in the past, there needs to be a period of consolidation before you can start to grow and move forward again. So, but that doesn't matter whether you're a community benefit society or a privately run company. If you've taken a loan and you can't afford the repayments, then you've got to rejig things to make sure you can pay it back. So that is not affected by this model. It's just that you just have to budget accordingly, and if that was to mean that you could only pay X amount a week instead of Y on your playing budget in order to pay your debt off, that's what you have to do.
Just pick it up on that then. So if something horrible happened, is it not? So it's not the same as a company limited by guarantee, where you're only liable for £1. You would all
No,
the
it's the
members.
same.
It's the same.
Yeah.
Thank you.
Any more? And we've had about between 45 and 60 people online throughout this evening.
Wow,
So
that's great.
good. I'll be posting the video of this online later as well. Plus, I'll create a written summary of the findings as well, so everyone can read it through.
Right, okay. Okay. I'd just like to say thanks very much for coming down and spending the time going through that. There's lots to think about. And also, thanks for all coming, and a big thank you to Dan, as ever, who works really hard for this football club, like other people in this room, for making all this happen this evening. Okay, thanks very much. Good night.
We'll see you all tomorrow night.